Good evening and welcome to the Monday, October 6, 2014 meeting of Lake Forest City Council. Could I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Schoenheider?
Here.
Alderman Waldeck?
Here.
Alderman Beidler?
Here.
Alderman Moore?
Here.
Alderman Pandeleon?
Here.
Alderman Tack?
Here.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Here.
Alderman Edelman?
Here.
Alderman Moreno?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. You have to bear with me tonight. I'm battling the end of a cold, so I may have my moments. First item on the agenda this evening, comments by the mayor. 2014-2015 new board and commission appointments. Tonight, I'm privileged to ask for approval to appoint Diane Fitzsimmons to the Elwa Foundation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, unanimously approved. Just my last comment tonight. Tonight, the council and some staff were privileged to have the chance to spend some time at the library this evening. And had a first-rate tour of the new media center, media lab that is at the library. And I would encourage every resident to get on the website, take a look at what's there. Obviously, the library itself has resources that are just incredible. Every time you go, you seem to forget what's there and the great benefit of all the things that are there for residents of the city. But the new media lab is quite extraordinary. And the things you can do, it sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, doesn't it? Things you can do, the places you've gone or something?
I think there's a poster in there.
There might be, yeah. But I would encourage you to explore it, much like the rest of the library. But, excuse me, we're fortunate to have such a terrific resource right here in the library. So thanks to Kay and for the entire staff of the library, too, for a very hospitable evening. That was very nice. Excuse me, that ends my comments. Next item on the agenda, comments by City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. I just have one item, and staff would respectfully request that you table this evening item number 5 under the omnibus with respect to the epoxy floors. City staff is going to meet with a local businessman who thinks they have ways that we might be able to do it much cheaper, and so we want to table it this evening. We'll come back in 2 weeks to see if we can try and reduce that price. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bob, very much. Next item on the agenda, comments by council members, Public Works Committee, and Chairman of the Public Works Committee, Alderman Waldeck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have the pleasure of honoring one of our longtime employees of the City of Lake Forest, Charlie Douglas, the Assistant Chief Water Plant Operator. Charlie has the distinction of receiving the 2014 Water Plant Operator of the Year Award. And I'm going to ask Dan Martin to step up and say a few words and give us a little background on this distinction.
Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, I'm pleased to announce that at last month's 83rd Annual Convention for the Illinois Potable Water Supply Operators Association and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, Charlie Douglas, the Assistant Water Plant Operator, was recognized by industry peers and awarded the 2014 Operator of the Year Award. There are approximately 4,000 certified drinking water operators in the state of Illinois. Operator of the Year is the highest professional honor operators can receive in recognition of service and performance in the waterworks industry that is responsible for producing and supplying drinking water throughout Illinois. Winners and finalists are nominated by their peers, screened by pre-selection committee, and chosen by a second committee that interviews nominees at their facilities. Charlie Douglas has worked for the City of Lake Forest for 37 years and is the first City of Lake Forest water plant operator to ever be awarded the prestigious Operator of the Year award. Charlie, I would like to thank you for your hard work and devotion to the City of Lake Forest. It is with great delight that I congratulate you on not only being the 2014 Operator of the Year, but to be the first in Lake Forest history. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'd like to really just thank the city, the staff, the executive staff, and the greatest group of operators in the world. Everybody except Dan Drager's here tonight. And you know, I really like to thank the city of Lake Forest for offering me a continuing lifetime of opportunity. Thank you, and anything to reflect the city and the way we try to serve our citizens is a good reflection, more on the city than me, because I've been given the opportunity to serve. And thank you very much.
Hey, Dan, you want to ask the coworkers to come up? Get in the picture with him? Nice job.
Hang on to that trophy.
Yeah, really, it's a big one.
Oh, yeah. Hey, my only question is, with all you guys here, who's running the plant? Yeah, right. Yeah, don't flush any toilets right now around Lake Forest.
Come a little bit forward. I'll come a little forward. Okay. Like that. Okay. Let me get one more of the two of you, the flash and the recycle.
Well, they're taking their last pictures. There's two stories about Charlie I'm going to tell. Number one, when I was just an intern, started in Lake Forest, part of the job of the intern is you get to go around with each of the departments. At that time, Charlie was a sanitation worker and drove me on a garbage truck around Lake Forest and taught me all about sanitation collection. That's why I'm such an expert today in sanitation collection in Lake Forest. And number two is the council should know more recently is that Charlie had the opportunity to take early retirement when we offered the early retirement incentive program, but instead he stuck around and stuck with us during this time, and we want to thank him for doing that. So Charlie, thank you, and congratulations.
All right, thanks, Dan, very much. Next item on the agenda is City Council approval of the winter 2014-2015 salting policy, salt quantity to be purchased, the waiver of formal bidding for a portion of the salt, and the final selection of salt vendors, presented by Michael Thomas, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, staff would like to present to City Council an overview of our current salt situation. As many of you have heard in the news recently, whether it was the newspapers or local news stations, that salt is in high demand and there is a low supply, and it is a direct impact of a heavy winter last year. Typically, when I spoke with the salt companies, typically the winter will be hardest hit usually on the East Coast or the Midwest, and they will have about 15% of their supply remaining throughout the United States. Going into this summer, their supplies at all the terminals throughout the U.S. were depleted 100%. And as we go through here, you'll see that a majority of the salt companies are actually bringing salt in from Chile, Morocco, Brazil, and Mexico. So it is economics 101. To begin with, just a quick history over the past 5 years. We've used on average approximately 2,900 tons of salt. Last year with heavier snow and ice, we used 3,500 tons. Last year through our state bidding process, we paid $52.33 a ton. We received, in addition to that was the emergency purchase that City Council authorized in early February that we got from a firm up in Minnesota. That we paid $185 a ton. This chart is somewhat difficult to see, but I wanted to provide you a summary of how much salt we have purchased in years past, along with what we have paid price per ton, and the number of inches of snow we've received. The interesting thing is that we see our salt usage go up when we have snowstorms. Every 2 or 3 inch snowstorm, we use the same amount of salt we'd use on a blizzard, because during a blizzard we won't salt until the very end. So if we have a winter like we did this past winter where the storms kept on coming, we tend to use, and actually in fact did use, a lot of salt. Back at the March 17th City Council meeting, City Council authorized staff the following allotment for salt for this upcoming winter. We have 800 tons remaining in storage at the Municipal Services Center. We have 500 tons that we have committed to purchasing through the Lake County purchasing process, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then 2,800 tons through state bid, a total of 4,100 tons. Salt will last. If we don't use it, we just buy less the following year. So that is how we have operated year to year for many, many decades. The Lake County Department of Transportation, they decided for the first time this year to go out to bid, and the reason was all the trucking issues that we had last winter. A lot of the salt was coming out of the terminals up in Milwaukee and Chicago. The truckers were sitting in lines for a long period of time, and everybody needed salt at the same time. So Lake County put together their own bid for 49,000 tons. We thought with the state with the state bidding out 800,000 tons in Northeast Illinois, we would get a better price. So we simply put 500 tons of our request through the county process and the remaining 2,800 through the state. We were wrong. We received notice in April that Lake County's price was, or the bidder that supplied the lowest bid was providing a price of $69.99 per ton delivered. The state bid for the 2,800 tons, we received notice at the end of August that our price was going to be $137.69 a ton. When we looked at the surrounding communities that were bid for the county bid, their prices ranged from $68.75 up to $71.42 per ton. And that's what we typically see, and we have seen in years past on the state bid that the numbers have always been tight, and it makes sense. The farther away you are from the terminal, it should cost you a little more in transportation, but in essence, everybody has a very comparable price. For the state bid, for the contract that we are under, the prices range from $74.94 for the Village of Skokie up to ourselves at $137.69 a ton. The low bid supplier on that was Morton Salt. We went ahead and contacted North American Salt with the county bid and asked if there was any possible way we could purchase additional salt. They said there was not, because they themselves were trying to bring salt in from Chile simply to supply the material that they had committed through this bid and other bids throughout the U.S. This is a review of the bidding results. Again, the top shows the state bid that was open on July 1st, again ranging from $74 up to $137, and then the lower chart shows the county bid. This is by no means all of the municipalities, park districts, townships. I simply wanted to take a quick snapshot of those that are close to us so you can see the range in prices. When we received notice that the amount that we were going to be requested to pay was that high, I went ahead and contacted 8 other salt companies, and we actually received quotes from four others. One was from Halicki Brothers, the company that we bought salt from in February. They were at $178 a ton. Second one was from Hutchinson Salt at $135 a ton. Third one was from Midwest Salt, and they're at $113.10 a ton. The interesting thing with Midwest Salt is that their requirement is that the city or whomever is purchasing the salt from them pay for all the salt entirely up front, not the delivery charge, but the salt. That salt is on a ship right now coming from Morocco and is supposedly due at the end of October. And you'll see that is why in the recommendation we're recommending conserve, because the salt is sitting in Lamont as we speak. It was challenge for us to suggest, even though it was a $2 a ton savings, paying that amount of money up front, we didn't feel comfortable doing that. And then Conserve FS, their price, $115.25 a ton and $119. The reason there's a price increase is that the trucking, as we get into the winter months, it is, again, supply and demand. There will be a huge demand on the trucking firms, so they are encouraging all of their customers to take as much salt as they can up front. And with our recommendation tonight, you will see that we're going to be requesting that in fact happen, that we hopefully receive authorization to purchase salt from Conserve, and we'll take 800 tons at MS in the next month, and we'll put another 600 over at Old MS as well. The other issue that we were reviewing was our salt usage, and this chart shows what we, best in reviewing the data, determined to be our limited, reduced, and normal usage of salt throughout the years. If we were to compare that against snow that we have received, an average winter is 39 inches. What we consider to be low is 21 inches, and then high is approximately 80 inches. But you can see with this chart what our typical salt usage is, and this will go into a little more with our salt policy. We were honing in on a number of 2,800, 2,900. So the normal usage of salt based against the average amount of snow that we use. That is how we developed our recommendations. This all is out the window if we get a heavy winter, but this is how we wanted to come to you and propose our recommendations. Number one, first of all, we are recommending that we go ahead and modify our salting procedures for 2014, 2015. Between December 1st and January 15th, not only the holidays, but most everybody is in town during that time period. We are recommending that we use our salt the way we always use it. We salt all the streets after we're done plowing. January 16th to February 15th, we do see a reduction in population in town. We can tell that through our sanitation operation, that we would reduce our salt usage to 75% of what we typically do. We would do that by only salting the mains, Western, McKinley, Everett, Telegraph, Old Elm, Old Mill. And then we would only salt hills, curves, and intersections of our side streets. So those two approaches, starting mid-January, would bring us down to the 83 tons per event. From February 16th to March 30th, we would reduce even more. Typically, the sun by mid-February is getting high enough in the sky where we begin to see a lot of the snow and ice melt, definitely by the time we get into March. So we believe we can pull that back. As a result, you can see in the right column, we would total everything up to approximately 2,900 tons. Number two, we're asking for City Council approval to approve the bid, the Lake County bid with North American Salt, to purchase the 500 tons at the $69.66 a ton, the bid that we received in April. Number three, recommending that the City Council reject the bid from Morton Salt as procured through the state process, noting that the bid materially varies from the bidding criteria that the city established for its participation in the state bid process. Number four, waive the competitive bid process and purchase 1,600 tons of salt from Conserve FS. As I noted, we will purchase 1,400 of that up front this month in October, so we will go into the winter with a full supply, as much as we can hold, and then as the winter moves on, we'll have a remaining 200 tons to purchase from Conserve FS at a little bit of a higher price, and when we need it, we'll go to the county and call for the 500 tons there. You add then on the material that we buy. We typically will use salt brine, salt water during the month of December. Temperatures go down and we'll switch over to calcium chloride usually at the end of December, and that's what we pre-wet the salt with. There's an expense to that, obviously, and then all the salt we purchase for all the city buildings, after those are all hand shoveled, All of that material comes out of the streets chemical account, so you can see the addition of $20,000 for that. Number 5, as we have for many, many years, but we need to have this part of the record, we're requesting the purchase of an additional 250 tons for District 67 and 115. The city is reimbursed for all the salt that the 2 districts purchase from us. We store it for them, we load it for them. And again, any salt that is not used is used the following winter. Last year, I believe they used approximately 350 tons. So they would be pulling back as well. The final item is we spoke a little bit about last winter, and you will see this in our proposed capital improvement plan for FY16, reinforcement of the salt bay at Municipal Services, basically constructing a 13-foot tall concrete wall inside the salt bay around its perimeter on 2 bays. That will allow us to hold an additional 600 tons total. So if you take what we can currently hold of 1,600 plus the 600, that'll equate to 2,200 tons we can start with every winter, and that's 75% of what we usually use during the winter period. Again, that item will be in your FY16 budget. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question, but I think it's more for you, Vic, I think, than Mike. And I have a feeling I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. One of the reasons that we're saving money under what the staff is proposing is because we're buying less salt. We were going to buy 2,800 tons from the state, and now we're only going to buy 1,600 tons at about $20 a ton lower. Do we have the option of saying to the state, we only want 1,600 tons? If we only bought 1,600 from the state instead of 2,800, it wouldn't be there wouldn't be as big a difference, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is that
in terms of the real dollars, yes, if we bought less, it would be a lesser impact. The price per ton would still have that differential. I would note that in communications that the staff has had with the state bidder, their view is that they made a particular bid, and it's that bid that they believe is what they are committed to provide, and they have not been amenable to talking about modifications to that. So I think at this particular juncture, our choice is either accept their bid as it came in or reject it, as there were some efforts to try to come to a middle ground that didn't seem to be of interest to the bidder.
Okay, because I just wanted to clarify that, because it seemed to me that, like this way it adds up to about $100,000 or so worth of savings, but if we were buying less salt, if we only were buying 1,600 tons and we were still paying that 137 versus the 115 or 119, it would be a difference, but it'd be more like in the $40,000-$50,000 range, which is still an awful lot of money. But I just wanted to hear from you whether that was even a possibility.
Well, again, it was a bid process.
Yeah.
There was a solicitation. There was a response to that solicitation. And while there's always the opportunity, once a bid has been submitted, to try to negotiate something different, from my understanding of staff's conversations, that was not of interest to the bidder. So we either have the choice of accepting it or rejecting it.
All right. Thanks.
I have a question. Can you go back to the page that shows all the different municipalities and what they paid?
Sure.
Is there an explanation why North Chicago, based on the distance, is paying such a low amount?
Not at all.
And they won't tell us anything, right?
No. The biggest comparison that I drew when speaking with the representatives was the Village of Lake Bluff, and they're requesting 900 ton, and they're $50 a ton less than we are, and we're right off of 94. Very few stoplights, Quite frankly, it's a very quick turnaround for the trucks as they come in. They offload their material and they're out within 10 minutes.
And just, how many tons in a truckload?
20.
So-
Maybe a few more than that.
How
22.
were the winners and the losers chosen?
Simply by low bid. So the state puts all the town's requests together to include theirs, and the counties and the townships and the park districts, and whoever is the lowest price for specifically them, we all follow. And they bid them in regions. So we are bid, for example, the Northeast region. They don't take the entire state. They take the Northeast region and said, okay, 800,000 tons needs to be rebid. And their amounts are in there as well. The interesting thing is that the state rebids every other year. So there are towns and townships, et cetera, throughout the state that actually this year is a renewal year for them, which means you get the price last year plus 5%. We just happen to be on the wrong end of the stick, and we are a rebid year. Last year, we were a renewal year, and that's why the price basically stayed the same.
Could it be my,
I'm sorry, for clarification, the list that you see on the screen right now, all of those are rebids, none of those are renewals.
that was my question.
So I have a question. Did you do the math and basically add all these up and take the average and find out what the actual bid for the total volume of salt was? So do we know where that comes in? Is that $113 a ton? If you put it all together, it would just be very interesting to see, because I don't believe for a minute that they went through and bid this breaking it apart. There had to be sort of a number for the total volume of salt, and then subsequently somebody broke it into pieces and did it this way. And so I'm just wondering what that number was and if that's actually the market price of salt that we were seeing.
I did not, but I would probably agree that your suggestion
Should have
is correct.
Elizabeth do that. I think she'd be a good person for that.
One thing I would note, I think it was about 5 years ago, there was a similar anomalous bidding situation through the state where, for no apparent reason, the variances between and among towns were just dramatically different. And there was no rhyme, reason, or explanation other than that's how it came out. The way that it was explained, to the extent there was an explanation at that time, was that the bidders come and they give a number for everybody, and the state determines what then is the lowest bid. This year there were a number of communities that were included in the bidding process that received a no bid. In other words, zero salt would be provided at without any quotation of price. So that again adds to the mystery of it all. And I don't know what better to describe it as a well, maybe I better not try to describe it, because I mean,
Black box. You could choose bizarre. You could choose ridiculous. We could probably go on maybe till midnight.
Do we know what the state's paying for their allocation?
No, I do not. I do not. We could find that out, I presume, through a FOIA request.
we
but
do have a
simply
pending
receive
FOIA
ours.
request. It hasn't yet been responded to by CMS.
Is the methodology that Lake County uses for bidding different? In other words, again, I'm not used to something where you bid something out and it turns out to be 8 million different prices. It's usually a volume bid, and you get a set price, and then it gets distributed that way.
Correct.
Is that how Lake County's bid process
Lake
works?
County's bid, it was interesting because Morton Salt was the other company that supplied a bid. There were two companies that did not provide a bid, and it was very, very simple to read when you looked at the bid tabulation. Morton was about $2 per ton on average, higher than was this Midwest or North American, I'm sorry. So it was very simple to see that North American was less expensive than Morton, which adds yet another twist to the...
And Mike, just for the record, what was Morton's bid under the county contract for the city of Lake Forest? which was approximately 3 months prior to the state bid.
Correct. I have that. Give me a second to...
Hey, while you're looking that up, it's $1,000 a truckload difference between the communities that are 5 and 10 miles away. Is there, I'm sure you can't, but you can't get it and pick it up yourself, right? You can't hire your own trucking company? That's just...
We asked that as well.
Okay.
And you're not allowed to. Morton's bid for City of Lake Forest, $70.83 through the county bid. Again, North American was cheaper at 69.66.
And do we know who does the allocation? Is it the state that does the allocation of the values, or is it the Morton Salt people that do the allocation of the values?
It is Morton Salt. Morton Salt will provide a bid to the state to say for all of these line items, City of Lake Forest, 2,800 tons, here's the price. Village of Lake Bluff, 900 tons, here's the price.
Who's our contract with? Is our contract with Morton or the state?
The contract, Morton...
Let
Morton,
me,
Or is
we
that
don't have a contract. This is
Okay.
what's before you tonight. We had, back in the spring, received city council approval to participate in the state bidding process. And in response to the authorization, the staff did file with the state a form which identified both the amount of salt we wanted and the amount that we budgeted, so that we'd have the specifications of what our commitment would be if the bids came in appropriately. As the bids came out, it was not something that staff felt comfortable recommending, and that's why staff has gone through the process that's been described tonight. One of your choices tonight is whether you want to accept the bid from Morton or reject it. The recommendation is that it be rejected.
Vic, is that what you're talking about on staff recommendation number 3? It says the bid materially varies from the bidding criteria that the city established for its participation in the state. And so the
Correct.
criteria were what?
The criteria that we set out is that we had a need for 2,800 tons, and we had a budget of 220,000, if I recall the number correctly. And their response was not at all consistent with that.
And they knew that criteria. That wasn't just known to us. The state knew that criteria?
The state is the one who received those criteria from us.
Okay. Okay.
So in other words, your opinion is we could reject it and we're on sound legal footing.
Yeah, that's my view.
So I don't think we need to kick the can around a lot. I think we should reject it and go with the other bidder.
Well, and I think it's interesting that actually through their effort, through Mike's team's efforts, they've got this down to a rather modest, 8 or 9% variance to the original budget, despite getting a quote that was, way higher. So, kudos to you guys for figuring out other options and ways to get this under control. But having said that, this doesn't smell good at all.
Well, can I also respond to that? In conversations with a number of other managers in other communities, it's sort of the haves and the have-nots. If you're one that was in the renewal, or if you went all in with the county contract, you might be sitting there thinking this is great. The problem is some of the inconsistencies that has occurred over the last couple of years. And so more recently, I think at the last Northwest Municipal Conference meeting, this question came up because there are some conference members that got no bids. And so they're out there scrambling for salt. Also have had some discussion with people, other managers affiliated with our municipal partnering initiative, the MPI program. So I think next year, in addition to Lake County also probably rebidding its salt, we might have 2 or 3 other options outside of the state. And so I think based on our experience, we probably will not be participating in the state process going forward.
Because that was kind of a question I had. Are we pretty much burning bridges with the state, and do we care? But
well, I'd like to say that we didn't have to, and I think, in retrospect, when we were making this decision back in April about how much to go in with the county and so forth, as Mike showed you on the slide, our previous price from the state was a very competitive price, and I think in the past we've always assumed there's a certain economies of scale which will give us the best pricing. I think because of some of these peculiarities that have occurred with this, as well as, I think it was 3 years ago, we had a similar situation. I think it's best for us to go into a process where we can, one, do it earlier, which I think we're learning certainly plays a major factor in what that price is, and two, we can control the bidding process much better than by working through the state.
Following on Kathy's comments and Bob's responses, it seems to me that we don't want to burn any bridges here, and that it's important to participate in any opportunity to bid as long as we have the option to exit if staff is able to do what they've done here, which is excellent. So I would think there's a learning lesson here as far as how we progress in the future, and I wouldn't step away from any opportunity. We need salt. It's a safety issue. So we need to fill. So one way or another, we need to have the flexibility to choose, and we need the flexibility to exit. Back to the single source supplier topic.
Is it a possibility to buy salt in June if we have the storage capacity such that you know, we don't get into the competitive trucking issues and everything else?
Yes. Yes.
Because I think that's the sort of take-home message, is that we got to do this, and having the storage capacity is very important going forward. It's kind of like Southwest Airlines and fuel.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's the idea of increasing the capacity of the salt bin. We've talked about that. That's very, very important.
And on that note, we talked about being able to store 3,800 tons with an increase to the salt bin, which is going to be less than 100,000. And now we can only store 600 tons more for $200,000 in construction to an existing wall to reinforce it. It just seems, I know it's...
And that's simply at this time is our estimate. We have a design completed. We've gone out and solicited. We have 3 different quotes, one at 140, one at 180, one at 234. So I simply at this time have picked a number of 200, not going further, not going out to bid, to see where the numbers may fall.
I mean, it still makes sense. It's still $50 a ton on part of our quantity, and I mean, it still makes sense, but it just seems like a lot of money to reinforce existing concrete walls.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I also get some feedback from the council on recommendation number 1? Because staff has had a lot of conversation about this, but I think most importantly, we need to hear from you on behalf of the residents as to what that level of expectation is. I think last year we did hear from a number of you about looking to modify our salting procedures, both not only for cost, but for environmental reasons. And so I think the staff has put together what we think is a very logical approach to it, but we want to make sure that that does meet with your approval before we proceed.
Can I ring in here first, because I was the one who raised the environmental and the cost issues. However, I will say this, your reduced salting for the 30-day period from mid-Jan to mid-Feb, you kind of characterize it as because so many residents are gone for the winter. But what impact does that really have on the condition of the surface of the roads? I mean, so there's half as many people who are going to crash their cars, but does that really mean that you can reduce your salt distribution on the roads just because the population's down?
That was something I just noted, but I think part of the issue too is that all of us have 45 days to get used to driving in snow again, and that by midwinter, people by that point should have been able to adjust how they drive. And again, if we cover the mains and then the hills, curves, and intersections of all the side streets, we think we can get by. But that was simply just a side note.
Okay. Well, on that subject, though, I was going to ask. Actually, it's good that Bob brought this up because I wanted to talk about this. One of the things I recall from last winter was when we were starting to run low on salt, we modified the salting procedures. And my recollection, and what that resulted in was, if you're going straight down a 2-lane side road, you're probably driving on hard pack and not on clear pavement. Correct. My recollection was we didn't get any complaints, that we didn't have issues of any consequence with more accidents or people crashing their cars, or, I mean, maybe a handful, but it didn't seem to make much difference, and that was part of what led us to ask that this be explored, because to my way of thinking, if that's the way it was going to be, we should do this all the time. I mean, you know, maybe around Christmas time, but, you know, that should be our normal procedure.
We had some complaints, but you are correct, not many. What is on my mind from the beginning of winter is truly that end of February, early March period, where it may be 38 degrees and we get rain with a melt. If those streets are not open, if those catch basins are not exposed, if we can't see them, we're going to have flooding all over the place. And the only way to do that, we've got to make sure that our guys, as we're plowing, when we say we do a curb run, we call it curb to curb, that we truly hit the curb on all these streets and push open the catch basins. Salt plays a role in that. Salt opens that up for us. So you are correct. We only received a handful of complaints. I think people began to understand what we were doing and why we were doing it. But again, as we get later on in the winter and we begin to deal with that snow melt, we immediately flip to flooding versus traction. And just another point of reference, all of our trucks have computers on them. They're all set, they're all calibrated every fall. We typically run at a rate 3 or 4, which means 300 pounds per lane mile or 400 pounds per lane mile. Highwood runs at 800. Waukegan runs much higher than 800. So a recycling bin, the old recycling bins, if you fill that up with salt, that's 130 pounds. So less than 3 of those, we are making a run for a 1 mile stretch. When you think about it, it's not that much salt. But we will adjust the rates depending upon pavement temperature. All of our trucks have sensors that tell us what the pavement temperature is, what type of snow it is, what's coming in after it, the temperatures, etc. So there's a lot that we put into determining what rate to go at, but I wanted to give you that frame of reference on how much are we truly putting down. So
I think Alderman Pantaleo, I think that is one of the reasons that we are back. You're absolutely correct. And I think part of what we will do at the staff level, if the council adopts this policy, is we will begin immediately a public education program with our residents to say, for all the following reasons we are doing this, much like we did with sprinkling, and it had a really positive impact on it. And I think what we'll do is we'll try and re-educate the community as to what is an acceptable road condition for us in Lake Forest, and hopefully we'll see positive results as a result of that.
My first reaction when I was reading this several days ago, preparation for the meeting, was, I guess, a little bit of a surprise of doing the normal salting, you know, from December 1st through January the 15th, and then going to reduce salting. Because in my own mind, I always think of that middle period as being worse, tends to be colder. You don't have the wet snow of December, which seems to go away more quickly. I don't know, I mean, at the risk of being accused of amateur hour, I would be okay with going to reduce salting from December the 1st through January the 15th.
I'm a little hesitant, but
You know, if you know what you could do, I would also give you the caveat that if in the middle of that period you think that's a mistake, you exercise your leadership privilege of going to a normal salting.
Okay.
But certainly trying it to the beginning part of the month, the middle part of the month, and even on through Christmas and New Year's. I guess when you start getting into January, I get a little concerned because, again, it gets colder and you have a bigger chance of icing and whatever. So,
right.
You know, for what it's worth.
And I think as Dan and I and the different people managing this operation, there is the economic side, there is the environmental side, there's the service side, there's the safety side, there is the flooding side. And all of that, when we're looking at these numbers, they're all running in our head at the same time. There isn't one. Environmental doesn't jump out at me. It's simply one aspect. The safety is, quite frankly, is the largest one, even more so than the economics of it. So that predominantly, if we can get to that point, if we can start there and we see that the roads are safe for everyone to travel in, then we will continue with that practice. So I agree, we can try that.
Jack, if I could, my only comment, and Bob, I know you wanted to mention something too. To Michael's comment, number one, excuse me, about it's early in the season, people are getting used to driving. I think the other thing that immediately sticks in my mind is that we want the community during the holiday season, for the merchants as well as the residents, to be clear. Having the people, the perception that Lake Forest is difficult to get around is not a good thing for our retailers either. And I think it's important that the community not only is perceived, but is actually a easy place to navigate during the holiday season. More people, more traffic, more activities. So I would suggest almost the opposite, which is I'd like Michael just to keep with his 100% salting. And if he finds that perhaps he can get by with a little less, that's great. But I wouldn't want to start you out lower and then have a little bit of a problem. I'm more concerned about making sure that during the holiday season we keep the streets safe and clear.
I guess my only final comment is, I think the most important thing is that we get direction from you that, yes, you're okay with us trying to be a little more efficient in our application, and that we will work with the staff, because we might do one reduced and then the next one regular, or vice versa. And I think a lot of it will depend on what are the weather conditions, what we have in supply. But I think that was the most important thing, is to understand if we were moving in the right direction, number one. And number two is that we will come back to you on a monthly basis to give you updates as to how many storms we've had, how much salt we've applied, where we stand, so on and so forth. Because if we have a really bad winter, and there are some people that are recommending that, like Farmer's Almanac, I think, that we might have to do reduced or very limited much earlier in the season too, just to make sure we have enough at the end of the year.
If it's not premature, I would move that we approve all 5 recommendations.
Second.
I think the issue is we may need roll call vote for all these individually, Vic, or can we do them
Yeah, one, but bear in mind that because there is a waiver, we need at least a 2/3 vote on that one. So
Okay.
2/3 would have to prevail over the entirety of the motion.
That would be number 3?
Number 4.
Number 4, the waiving competitive bids. I tell you what I'd like to do in the interest of just making sure we've dotted the i's and crossing the t's. I'd like to take each individually. If you'll bear with me, let's just try to knock them through. Any other questions for Michael? Before
Just
we go?
one comment, because we've had the question brought up in the past, and Michael's clarified it, but a lot of people that have lived in rural towns or out west know that gravel's cheaper and it can do the same safety things, but Michael's pointed out in the past that for anybody watching or curious, that they don't have a sewer system that needs to be cleaned out at more cost than putting down the gravel. So for those people who call up and suggest gravel.
Or sand.
Or sand.
Yep.
Either
Or
way,
sand.
it
Yep.
wrecks our sewer.
Okay. All right, and here's what I'd propose. Let's take each item individually. First item, the 2014-2015 winter salting policy as proposed. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy. And Michael, just to clarify, I think you heard from the council, you've got some leeway on either side of that, right?
Yes, thank you.
The second item, approval of the bid from North American Salt Company is procured through the Lake County bidding process for the purchase of 500 tons at $69.66 a ton. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy. Next item, rejection of the bid for Morton Salt is procured from the State of Illinois bidding process. As such bid materially varies from the bidding criteria that the city established for its participation in the State of Illinois bidding process. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
You got a whole bunch of those.
Can I second it 3 times?
Yeah. Yes.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
And number 4, waiver of competitive bids and approval of the proposal from Conserv FS for the purchase of 1,600 tons of road salt at the price of $115.25 and $119 per ton respectively. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
And finally, the city annually purchases, stores, and loads School District 67 and 115 salt. So the average use is around 250 tons, and the city is reimbursed for all salt used by the district. What is not used remains in the salt bays for the following winter. Need a motion to approve that activity.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy. Michael, thank you very much for all your good efforts here and your team.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it.
Any other comments by council members this evening?
Do my street first.
We'll talk about him later. Next item on the agenda, opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Would you like to come up, sir, please, and identify yourself?
Paul Hammond, 55-year resident of Lake Forest, 2nd Ward. I have a few comments regarding the former municipal facilities service site. I and other residents would like to see that land used as a park. The land value for that property is on the city books at approximately $10 million. There are approximately 8,000 homes in Lake Forest. If apportioned an amount to each home, then the cost would be approximately $1,000 per home. The median home price in Lake Forest is about $800,000. So if the city made the land a park, then a person could make an argument that the new median home price would be $801,000. A little history. About 10 years ago, the residents voted to spend, I believe, about $10 million or $4 million for the purchase of the Town Line Community Park. I voted for the purchase. I've never used the park, but I believe that the purchase was for the greater good and has improved the aesthetic and livability of Lake Forest. I also believe that the 2 or 3 brick garages at the former municipal service site with the salt storage should be saved for the 30-plus snowstorms each year. Don't forget that the land was used last winter for all the snow removal from Market Square. A side comment, I am against any TIF, tax increment financing district, for that land. I and other residents hate the concept of TIFs. The city of Chicago has many TIF districts, and the city of Chicago is broke partially because they have been diverting tax dollars from their needed services for those private projects. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any other citizens wish to address the council on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to items for omnibus vote consideration. The agenda lists 7. As Bob mentioned earlier, we are removing number 5, tabling that one. So there'll be 6. I'll read. If any council member wants to take any separately, we'll do so. Otherwise, I'll ask for a vote
I have one.
at the end.
In the minutes from last month, page 90 or page 23, I just wanted to point it out that I had pointed out it was the 4th time we had no bids and the 2nd time this year that we had more no bids than bids on the omnibus. And that those details were, it just said comments by aldermen in the minutes. I just wanted that pointed out because I feel it's getting out of hand and I wanted to make a record of the amount of times.
Would you like the minutes reflected that way?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right, item number 1, approval of the September 2nd, 2014 City Council minutes as amended per Alderman Moore's comment. Item number 2, check register for the period August 23 to September 26, 2014. Item number, I'm sorry, it was item number 2. Item number 3, resolution of appreciation for Randall J. Diekman. Number 4, resolution of appreciation for Dan Jessica, Parks and Recreation Board Member. Item number 5, approval of Plant Moran Professional Services for Phase 5 of the Parks and Recreation Service Replacement Project as budgeted in FY15 capital plan. And item number 6, approval of resolution supporting an intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement mutual aid. Any other comments or changes to those? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to approve them all. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Nadelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Betty, very much. Next item, agenda ordinances. Any ordinances to come before the council this evening? Seeing none. Next item, new business. Any new business to come before the council? Item number 8, additional items for council discussion. Any additional items? Is there necessity for executive session? Okay. Seeing no additional items, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.